The Academy of Esports podcast is brought to you by LeagueSpot. LeagueSpot, your brand, your league, your way.
Welcome to the Academy of Esports with James O'Hagan. He's on fire. Boom shakalaka.
Welcome to the Academy of Esports podcast. I'm your host, James O'Hagan. The Academy of Esports podcast is powered by LeagueSpot. LeagueSpot, your brand, your league, your way. And this week on this episode, I get to hang out with Dylan Liu. He is the CEO of Uconnect. Dylan, thank you for being a guest on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
Thanks for having me, James.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you on, not just because your work with Uconnect and in the collegiate space within esports, but you are also one of those, the early adopters, we shall say, one of the early trailblazers with Texas A&M Esports, which started several years ago. But before we get into, of course I hit my mic like that. Before we get into all of that, I always introduce our guests with a few lead-in questions. So, I would like to ask you first off, Dylan, what is a game, and it doesn't have to be a video game, that stands out as having been important to you at some point in your life? Why was that experience meaningful?
Probably League of Legends, just because that's kind of where all collegiate esports started out from. And I was like super into it in the beginning, but really like it's important to me because like when I started my esports organization, I actually started playing it less, but it also like helped me, gain a lot of friends and like help me like kind of get an understanding of what it means to like build a community, and like kind of led to my current career path. So, and I think they definitely laid the foundation for where collegiate esports is now, or like where it could be. So I think, owe a lot to Riot and stuff.
When you say you started with that, now again, Texas A&M, how long ago was that program started? When you started
2011,
Texas
so
okay,
more than 10 years ago. Yeah, started in 2011, and then we became an officially registered organization in 2012. And all collegiate esports organizations started out as League of Legends Club.
Now, when you before getting into League of Legends, what were some of the other titles, I guess, that you would say kind of influenced your gameplay or things that you loved to play as a kid?
I wasn't really allowed to play games as a kid, but like obviously I still found opportunities. I would say like I definitely played a lot of like Age of Empires, Civ 5, a lot of strategy games, so that was like a relatively kind of easy transition to League of Legends. And then I definitely played like some MapleStory and some MMORPGs and stuff, and that was like part of being part of a community kind of thing. But yeah, that's just some of them.
Yeah, I grew up in a household where we were not allowed to have a game console in the house. And so yet it was still one of these things where I guess we're drawn to playing video games. So I get that. I really do. Unfortunately, where you say, because I love games like Civ and Age of Empires as well, I have not made the easy transition to League of Legends. I am one of the worst League of Legends players you will ever see. And I just don't have I guess maybe I don't have the patience for it. I don't play with the right people, but.
Gotcha. Yeah. Fun fact. I actually got, I took the AP World History test without taking the class. I got a 5 on it just because of Civ 5 and Age of Empires. So
you know what? That's awesome.
And risk, and risk too. Just because like you start learning where the chokes are and like where the strategic points are, but then you also learn like, oh, Siams. Who the heck knows Siam? But in like risks, it's like a whole little thing, right? So I kind of learned like my world geography. Oh, it was AP World History and AP World Geography. World Geography was the one. Sorry. I also got a 5 on AP World History, but like AP World Geography, like you learn where all the chokes are and like where all the strategic points, and then like just by memorizing that, you can kind of remember where everything is like in the world map and stuff. But yeah,
I know that everybody has their start in Risk. Their place where they will always like to. Where do you like to start placing your armies in Risk?
Sometimes I'll go the Australia route. Sometimes I'll go Europe as well. I mean, it just really depends, right? Wherever you can end up taking over, but usually it's like the main ways to go is like you do the South America and Africa combo, or you can go from South America to North America,
Mhm.
or you can just take Europe, or you go from Australia and slowly expand to Asia. So it just like kind of depends on where you can get a foothold and stuff. But yeah, I guess my favorite would be, I would say like probably Europe. So
For me, it was always Australia. That seemed to be the one to get the additional armies really quickly. What
yeah,
about with and again, I swear we will get into the other meat of the conversation, but I
sure.
always love finding somebody who is interested in this. When you're playing Civ, what civilization do you like to start with?
I play China. Yeah, just because
Okay.
Chinese. But yeah.
I would play Ireland, except we would be kicked out of the game really quickly. Ireland is
Yeah,
not known for their
Empire
prowess.
building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we are not empire builders. We are sit back and get empired.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe it's totally eccentric or maybe it's quite traditional, but what is your superpower? That thing you do better than most people, or what do you wish you could do? Now, again, you took 2 AP exams. It sounds like without, well, was it world geography you didn't take the class for?
Yeah, world geography I didn't take the class for, yeah.
Okay. That's pretty awesome. Well, what is that superpower that you have that you wish that you had?
Um I mean the superpower I think I have is like I take criticism really well. So like I don't think take things, and I think it comes from like Asian household where like you're constantly being criticized. So like I'm not like too snowflakey about like other people, and that's like a really core thing about startups, like startup founders is like you know, I start out in the Houston startup community and everyone's like super nice and polite, but they're also not very like that's pretty useless because you know like if they're not giving you active criticism, that means they don't really care enough, and
Mm,
or they just don't know enough or whatever. But the moment I went to Austin, like if when I talked to like my first VC or whatever, they just like ripped me apart. And you know, I think like it takes a certain kind of person to like just like low like be humble and just like lower yourself down to the point of like, hey, maybe I'm fucking up somewhere. So yeah, I think like I was able to do that really quickly. I think uh maybe not better than most people. Maybe I'm like overestimating that, but I am like I think like the criticism thing I'm generally pretty decent at. But I think maybe as people get older, they're a little bit more open to that or whatever. But yeah,
I can say that in this day and age, especially working with young people for as long as I have, criticism
mm,
has become, I guess, a dying art for acceptance. Even myself, sometimes I find myself finding it hard to take criticism. So I admire that about you,
yeah,
being able to go to do that and to call yourself out in that
yeah.
way. What's a song can be whenever it hits your speakers, you're going to sing along to it, whether it's bad or good, or you could just
None,
bob your head.
none,
What? No, no
none,
song?
no song.
Really?
Yeah,
You're just okay.
I just listen
Not
to
even
Lofi.
like the League of Legends theme song. You hear that come
No,
on,
I
you're
listen to
like,
Lofi hip
yes,
hop so I can work harder.
nice. Okay. Okay. And what's in our field, the field that you and I work in? What's something that you feel really surprises you? This is kind of transitioning into the meat of the conversation again.
Yeah,
Background as a 2000, going back to 2011, starting Collegiate Esports, and now again with Uconnect, where you're helping with branding, you're helping get
mhm.
people's and impacting way collegiate organizations can raise funds. What's something that
Yeah.
surprises people about the work that you do?
About like the industry or like the work I
In
personally do.
Sure, however you want to take the question.
Okay. I think that what surprised me about the industry is like, I think a lot of the metrics, there's a lot of esports viewership is fake. And like there's a lot of like little tricks and nooks and stuff that you can kind of run and to like kind of inflate numbers. But I think one of the reasons why esports is like not doing so well is because like that thing has gotten out of control. The whole like inflating numbers thing, like people
Mm-hmm.
use embedding on websites and they use like embedding websites, bots, and that's not even just esports, just in general. Like I was reading an article about like there's like OnlyFans agencies that it's like networks of like millions of bots that like inflate numbers on Instagram to like get more people into like OnlyFans. And it's not like it's OnlyFans is an example, maybe not the most appropriate, but that's happening like across multiple like digital space and stuff. Like
Mhm.
I had a friend who's in the gaming space. He didn't go like to the millions of bots thing. He went more for like 20 or 30, but there's like bot networks. They have like specific ways that they can manipulate the bots to look like real people, but like that's just like it's like artificially boosting all these different accounts and like viewership, like, and this the boosting of the viewership stuff is like it's happening with like big companies too, you know, like
Hmm.
they're like large companies that are doing like mainstream events, and they're like they're utilizing these services. I know because I have the deck and it shows all the logos and all the events that were like kind of boosted by these things. And yeah, it's just like a lot of I also think there's like a way over reliance on impressions as
Hmm.
a metric, and I think it's telling that like esports may get like millions of impressions or whatever they say, but then the conversions are like shit, you know. So like I don't I think some of the impressions is like a lot of it is like artificially boosted or very very light engagement, and I think that's just like part of the whole like overhyped. I still love esports, it's a real thing, it's not
Hmm.
like crypto or anything, but I think it's
Thank
well it's
God.
yeah, it's definitely like there's definitely like tangible benefits, like tangible, like there's definitely people who are using it and like benefiting from it and enjoying it and stuff like that, not just like for the monetary value. If anything, they're enjoying it despite the monetary value. But yeah, I think that yeah, there's a lot of inflation going on and like overhyping, and now like that's kind of all come to roost. And I don't blame that on esports, I blame that on the VC culture. Even when I went through like startup incubators and stuff, like I think being good at pitching and being good at running a business is like two very different things. Some people have both of them. I know people like that and I admire them a lot because I'm not good at pitching. But there's some people, especially in collegiate esports, who are just good at pitching and not good at running a company. So yeah, I don't know. Just I think there's a lot of like things that are kind of being kicked back into reality.
Well, and you raise a lot of great points, and I think that kind of gets into one of the big questions we wanted to follow up on, which was the main challenges that we see right now.
Mhm,
Again, the over promising and the under delivering.
mhm,
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that this was going to take off like any other sport, but what we've actually
mhm.
seen is that the sport that has taken off over the last couple of years of experience, I guess you could say, close to is pickleball. You know, it's something as simple and easy as it didn't need a screen. It converted tennis courts. It was
Mhm.
accessible to a lot of people. Yeah, that has become a lot of success. But I think you're right too about the pitch and the owner and the running of a company. I think we're seeing right now
Yeah.
we're reaping the fruits of inexperienced CEOs being basically given millions of dollars that come from, by the way, you know, not necessarily from other 20 and 30-year-olds, but they're coming from people who are in their 50s and 60s
Yeah. I
who
mean,
have expectations on a return. And here's a prime example. Let's look at FaZe Clan.
mhm,
You know, a company that started off with gaming and thought they could use their social media influence. And again, you brought up the whole thing about bots. I mean,
mhm,
you know, let's talk about that. Let's talk about crypto and how they pump and dump,
mhm,
which was exposed by CoffeeZilla very very well. By the way, it made me a
mhm.
fan of his to watch how he worked that through. Would you say that's the main challenge right now? I mean, we've got FaZe Clan, which would what a couple of months ago was at $14-15 a share, and now is probably like five
I
or
mean,
tens. Going to
a
be
lot of it
five.
was based on speculation, right? That's like the
Mm-hmm.
core of it, and that's going to happen with any new market. It happened with the internet, where like there's a correction phase. I think it comes also from like VCs are kind of like lemmings, where like they're very like I mean, this has been joked about on Silicon Valley, but like everything on Silicon Valley is very very true.
Love that
Um,
show.
yeah. So
I
like
grew up in the Bay Area too, so it also just all comes
yeah,
together for me.
I can tell you most VCs have no idea what they're doing in esports. They don't really have much like industry knowledge, and just like from VC culture, like um, just the culture that VCs have kind of set is like people will only give you the rosy view until everything collapses. You know what I mean? So like yeah, I think VCs typically don't really know what they're investing in. They just kind of follow what the trend is, and that's how you create this kind of volatile, like tons of speculation, over investment of money, and then suddenly everything comes crashing down, and then a bunch of people have to be like kind of cleansed off of the ecosystem, and then it has to grow off real metrics. So I think like that's probably that's what people say are happening to crypto and like Web3 and stuff. I'm like I 30% or 20% agree with that, but I do think that's probably happening with esports, because I do think esports is like a lot more tangible as an industry, and I think that's what's happening a lot with just things overall. But yeah, I do put a good amount of. I think it's like a codependent relationship between like startups and VCs. But yeah, I don't
Well,
even know
and
what the
again,
question was anymore. I'm kind of like getting off track. I tend to rant a little bit, so yeah.
no, we are free forming. We are free flowing this. But let me follow up on then, because it was about some of the challenges that you see right now. Again, with your company, Uconnect, you are in the business of analytics. You are in the business of examining and helping to not just drive. If I'm understanding it right, and maybe I need a clarification.
We're more going in that direction. I think right now we're more like we help like streamline and do logistics more. So we're almost like a productivity platform, or like a management platform, and then we're moving more towards into analytics and stuff. But like the first part of it is just like making sure sponsorships even happen, and make
Mhm.
sure they can happen on a national scale, and then like we get into analytics and being able to pull metrics and stuff. A big part of it of like the reason why we kind of like had a delay in growth is mainly because of COVID. Like for
Mhm.
live event sponsorships and club, we work a lot with clubs. A lot of them were dead during COVID, so like we just had 2 years where we were just like surviving. But yeah, I definitely did not subscribe. It just didn't make sense to me. The whole like it's called blitz scaling. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
No.
it's a big thing in the startup ecosystem, where like basically you raise a bunch of money, and there's a bunch of companies in esports, especially collegiate, not especially collegiate esports, but including collegiate esports, that kind of subscribe to this thing that like VCs kind of taught. It's basically when you raise a ton of money, you purposely spend like you just throw money into the air, make it rain, and you basically like blitz your growth to take as much market share as possible as fast as possible, and you raise another round, and then you like keep doing that to just like it's about like speed, right? And in
Mhm.
theory it makes sense, but I think it um I think like the thing I was worried, just didn't make any business sense to me, and like the way it ended is pretty much what I was afraid would happen if I tried to do that.
Mhm.
I also think that when people raise a lot of money, they tend to be very like I don't think people take it seriously enough, like what comes with the money, like what responsibility and milestones come. They're just like care about like getting that big check so that you'll be okay for the next year or two, right?
And the
And
social
other
media to say like, "Hey, look at what we got."
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But also just like I don't think that um I think that this is a common thing. Like this is known among like VCs and startups, but like when you get a lot of money really fast, you tend to be a lot less careful about it. And I think I was forced into the position I'm in because I'm really bad at pitching. Because pitching relies a lot on like fake until you make it, like being very confident and just like painting this super rosy pictures with like white lies and stuff. And I'm a pretty straightforward person, and I'm not very like my main characteristics is not charisma. Like I'm not very charismatic, but like people tend to trust me and stuff like that. But I can't like the charisma is definitely not my thing, and that's something that like kept me from raising like super large rounds, and also like part of it is also the speculative thing. I was never really willing to like be like, oh, we'll grow into a $3 billion company in 3 years or something, some shit like that. Like I just can't do it. I can't
We're going
physically
to
do it.
change the world.
Yeah, it's like cringe as fuck. So like I was never able to like play that part. So I think I've been able to survive a lot longer than a lot of entities that have kind of come and gone who have had more resources than me, because like I've kind of stayed scrappy and like saved my resources. It's definitely slowed growth. It's not as slow, but like we've survived and we'll like keep surviving. And like I'm all about like sustainability and because I'm an econ major, so like I think in terms of like units per whatever,
Okay.
and I think a lot of startup founders don't think well enough like that. Like, don't think in terms of that enough. They're thinking too much like, oh, we're gonna grow the Facebook way, you know. And yeah, anyway. So that was a long-winded answer, but
No, but you did touch on something that I want to kind of go back to, because it was about, again, we've talked about some of these false, I don't want to say false promises, but like right now how there's a correction happening.
yeah.
And I know that a lot of educators, especially who are involved with nonprofit organizations, listen to this podcast, and they may have questions. You brought up about sponsorships.
Yeah.
When whether you're working with a collegiate organization, let's talk about the collegiate organizations, because I think that's probably the closest in line we can make between a nonprofit at the state level and a collegiate organization. When an organization goes to a sponsor and said, we would love to sponsor you, because I don't think very often it happens the other way around. What can they expect? Like, how could the conversation, like, say like, oh, okay, we want to go to Acer, or I want to go to Razer, and I want to be like, hey, you should sponsor our state association. Why would they even consider that? What are some of the things that they want to see before I even go to them and say, hey?
The only thing they're going to care about is arena sponsorships. So they just want to sell computers to you. That's pretty much it. Like, I mean, that's what it really comes down to at this point, especially in this economy. Pretty much every major peripherals and whatever company, they're all just looking for sales. It's like no, like impressions and all that stuff. They still matter to some companies, but ultimately it comes down to sales now, because revenue is really tight.
Where should, if I, again, let's taking that example of a nonprofit organization, and I'm not saying you're giving away all your work for free, obviously, but if you were to consult with somebody, what's a market, I guess, they could look to where they said, hey, if you're looking for sponsorship just to sustain your organization or to reduce costs for your students or something like that, this is where you should look. Where might I start the conversation?
Honestly, I think people need to rely less on sponsorships. I think they need to start like looking internally. That's something that was lost with the whole TESPA model. Like, I don't have anything against TESPA; they're really good people. But like people, like a lot of like collegiate organizations, they were profitable. Like not like they would take away money, but like that they would have money left over every year to spend more, make events bigger. And then as TESPA kind of like TESPA tried to centralize everything, and it kind of like chipped away at the independence of organizations until like we're at this point where like the only support people are getting are through sponsorships, not through internal revenue. And people don't even think like that anymore. Like, whenever I bring this up, like clubs will like call me a boomer or something, like, oh, that's the way things used to be, but they're not the way things
they
are
call
now.
you a boomer?
Yeah, because it's just like a boomer way of thinking, I guess. But I understand where they're coming from, but I think like this is one of those things where like you know, I it's also because they never lived through that period, so they don't know how like good it was, you know. Yes, we didn't get any brand sponsorships, but we were like growing like crazy. It was like a golden age of college esports. I think like the golden age was when like people still had internal revenue, and then also were getting some sponsorships from like TESPA and Riot. Now it's kind of shifted to one side where everything's just like, if we don't get sponsorships, we don't have anything. Like, we're not charging for events, we're not charging admissions and stuff like that. I think for a little bit they'll have to depend on the whole like just work on growing the community and monetize it later. But I think they don't have a good financial plan moving forward. It's like too dependent on like, oh, the university will fund us and stuff like that, and that's like I don't like that. I don't like that. But sorry, what was the original question again?
No, you're right on. You're right on. Yeah. And this actually starts to lead us into the next question. But again, when it comes to this, I agree with you about how Collegiate is funding not just teams, but also clubs and organizations on the campuses. I've seen some really, again, when you just look at the job postings, right? It's, oh, be an esports director. Okay, cool. What's it pay? $24,000. Like, what? And you want me to run everything. You want me to run like the club experience. You want me to run the competitive esports experience. Oh, and you're not going to have any staff to help you do it.
Well, I will. Oh, sorry. Go
ahead. No. Please.
You finish your sentence. I have a habit of doing that. Yeah.
No, you can jump all over me. It's fine. Go.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, the whole like esports director thing. I know, like, I think like the salaries do suck, but I think like if you're looking at it from like a whole timeline standpoint, it does make sense. Not that it's like a good salary or anything, but like things started out with like no one getting paid and there weren't even any job opportunities. Then there were like some job opportunities, they paid low and stuff like that, and now we're in like and then it's just like over the entire lifespan of college esports, like where things are at. It sucks compared to most industries, but there has been progress. I think things are not going to get better until esports directors like start taking revenue seriously, because right now I do think like esports directors are I mean, like some people have done this well and they raise from like local businesses, like sometimes millions of dollars. I don't know that that's like the status quo or whatever. I think that might be just like a couple outliers, but I think um yeah, I think that they need to start taking like brand sponsorships and like actually thinking about what brands want more
Mhm.
seriously, rather than just like, oh, we're gonna win a bunch of tournaments and stuff like that. Because ultimately, like winning a bunch of tournaments means nothing to brands. Like they don't care. Like the competitive, and people are gonna disagree with me on that. And I've said this before. And we've kind of I've talked with like Clerky and Adam, like, and we've kind of talked in circles. But yeah, like they need, like the way things were before that actually made things interesting. I talk to brands all the time. I know what they want. Um, and so like the community part has always been the most important, and the
Mhm.
competitive part was always like an add-on that kind of leached off of the, not leached, that's a bad word, but like basically leached off the community value to get
Mhm.
sponsorships. Basically like the community would get sponsored, and then the varsity team would be able to like benefit partially from that, right? But now you're seeing like a weird thing where like varsity programs are the only thing on, and they're having trouble getting sponsorships unless they have like computers that they can buy. That's where like brands would suddenly become interested.
Mhm.
But I can tell you that when I talk to brands, it's typically like if they're a small school, give them a standard discount. If they're a big school and they have a big community, then like based on the size of their community, they get like a bigger discount, or possibly even like get everything for free.
Mhm.
Or they get like everything for free and cash. But it really is it's basically like a scale, like a meter thing, where it's like, okay, like the bigger the community and the bigger the like the reach and stuff, the more we give them, and then the less they have. And if it's just like a team, I can tell them, oh, they win a lot of tournaments, they're like, okay, I don't care, like that doesn't drive sales for you, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of I think people, yeah, a lot of the esports directors don't understand that, and and they're doing their job that they were hired to do, and they're doing it
Mhm.
well and like over what should be expected of them. But they're it's never going to get better if they don't start tackling those core revenue problems. And I know a lot of people also say like, oh, it's just about recruitment and stuff like that. I think that's true for like the smaller schools, like recruiting
Yeah.
students through esports, like just putting themselves on the map for esports. That's valid. Um, but I think that that's going to have, so they're basically getting funding from bringing in students, like attendance and tuition and stuff like that. But
Well,
I
yeah,
think
and we
that,
know those. We
yeah,
know that those scholarships are not full rides. So, yeah,
yeah,
especially a small school. I have one near me that I believe is $42,000 a year. Yes,
yeah,
they do give esports scholarships, but they're giving maybe a few $1,000s. And I don't want to make
yeah,
that sound like small change. I mean,
yeah.
thousands of dollars is still a nice thing to be given. But you're
Hmm.
right in that this is because now all of a sudden they've got 10 kids that maybe they
Hmm.
weren't getting before, that instead of paying $42,000 a year, they're paying $35,000 a year, and they're still making $350,000 on income coming in from those tuition costs.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, like, um I mean, there's a whole like structure. I think honestly it needs to be burned down, like rebuilt pretty much. But like the good thing about those big schools, especially for like viewership and stuff, it wasn't just like the way that they did things. I really liked where they were going, and then things just kind of flipped for whatever reason. But they were like built. They were like, before each match, they would have like a short like 30-second or 1 minute like little mini documentary spotlighting the team and the school and stuff like that. And it was like creating these stories and relationships, getting to know these people, and that's what brought in viewership. There's a ton of support from like Riot and Blizzard for like the clubs themselves, so it created a giant community that could be monetized off of, but also it created a fan base so that people would actually watch and care about these like matches and stories. That kind of all died, and there was like right now in collegiate esports there's a way over focus over tournaments, like the competitive side, and like rather than like building a fan base, building stories, building community, which is like what collegiate esports was built off of. I think over focusing on that has created a situation where like they're trying to sell shit that no one that doesn't they're trying to sell shit that like really ultimately doesn't do anything for anyone. Like look at the viewership numbers for most tournaments. Some like a lot of it honestly is like, and I've taken advantage of this too, but mostly for my educational panels, so I don't, it's whatever. But yeah, it's inflated. It's from front page, right? So the majority of them like they'll get like maybe 50 viewers, like 20 viewers, 30 viewers for tournaments, and then maybe for the finals they'll request from like Twitch Student, which is dead now. So like it's gonna be a really interesting year seeing a bunch of tournaments that pretty much relied on front page lose front page and try and monetize off those numbers. Like eFuse pretty much they run off of impressions from social media. It's like the streams that they do, they don't their main selling point is not their viewership, because their viewership is also bad. It's off of the social media impressions. So basically they work with influencers. They invite a bunch of influencers. The influencers share the posts, and then like that's how they basically accrue a bunch of impressions, and that's how they sell to brands. So
Right.
yeah, that's how. And like I've done that too. I mean, I haven't really I that's what we did with Creator U, but Creator U was not like a money making, that was more of a passion project. It wasn't like we were trying to make it profitable or anything. But I mean, I've seen the benefits of that. It does like work to an extent, but it's definitely not sustainable. You'd have to be, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to be doing it like for a specific purpose. Like we made Creator U so that we like could start building opportunities for student streamers, not so that we can sell impressions, and that was like a goal of Twitch at the time, to like basically create more discoverability among like and also create more student streamers. So that was the core thing. It wasn't like, oh, we want to sell as many impressions as possible. So
I,
yeah, yeah.
I love Creator U in that. Okay, so for those who don't know, and this was something back when we would do the Esports EDU podcast. We talked about having the Esports EDU house for like the ISTE conference, okay, which is the big educator conference. But we were going to do like a series of, the idea we were throwing around before the pandemic was we all come to the house, we have people over because all these educators are going to be there. We talk about esports, we record all of it, we share it. We get new voices out there. Creator U was, you were selecting, I think it was 6.
No, we made it 8 because we didn't. There's 2 really good people that we just couldn't kick out, so we just decided to go over budget. That whole thing was over budget, but it's whatever.
But the concept again, okay, so 8 people unrelated are selected, come to TwitchCon, they get a house, they get a few days of exposure to show off, build their brand, almost like, like a small little real world, kind of experience where, or I won't call it Big Brother because God knows that's a mess, but
it was more like
experience.
an accelerator, like a streamer accelerator. And like I'm not really in the streamer world. I'm honestly not a huge fan of the culture around it. But like those students were like the best students. Like the vast majority of them, like were like. So like they were so accommodating, even though it was like a little bit scuffed. The whole thing, because it was the first time we did it. Yeah, they were like they were really good students, and like I'm cool with them. So like the students are always like, I'm always cool with students and stuff, but just like the overall streamer culture is a little like even the couple months that we were in Creator U, like I was getting DMs from like other streamers. There's like a whole, like, it's so petty, like they'll try and bring other streamers down, like, oh, she's not even that pretty and blah blah blah. I'm like, shut up, like I don't have time for this shit. But they'll like DM you over like really petty shit and be like, oh, you shouldn't work with this person, she's involved in a lot of drama and stuff, just like, clandestinely, like and I do my own clandestine thing, but not like over petty shit. Like I do it over like scandals and like financial, like, but like they do it over like, oh, she like it's just like petty gossip arguments as like I really don't care about, but like that happens on I got a little touch of that just from like working a little bit with Creator U. Like the
Hmm.
streamer industry is like has so much of that. Like I mean, I'm sure you've seen there's like little like group chats of people talking shit about each other and stuff. It's just like the least interesting thing to me. But um yeah but yeah yeah, I don't know, I forgot what my point was,
No,
but
we were just talking about Creator U and just the experience. But
yeah,
let me kind of segue back, because again, we were talking about, how the landscape of sponsorships has changed.
mhm,
One of the things we wanted to talk about was advice you would give a group with limited resources wanting to start a gaming club. So let's say, hey, I go to this small college. Again, they don't even know what gaming is. We're in the middle
mhm,
of, limited resources. We're, in a state where there's not really a presence of high tech, we shall say. Let's say, all right, let's Barrow, Alaska. All right, I don't know if
yeah,
there's a college up there, but let's
sure.
say Barrow, Alaska. How would they start a game? What advice would you give them when it comes to starting a gaming club?
I mean, everyone had limited resources when we first founded clubs, so like that's not really an excuse. Like I just spent my own money. I was like, oh, I was what's lower than a waiter at a restaurant? Like a runner? Um, yeah, I was like a runner. I was
Dishwasher.
no. There's like runners. There's like
Oh, I worked in the back of house, so it was
oh,
the
okay.
dishwasher. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's someone who like there's like someone who like cleans the tables and stuff like that, a busboy. So I started
Busboy.
out as
Yeah.
busboy, and I went to a runner. I never made it to a waiter because I graduated by then, but and then like right above runner is like a waiter or something. But basically, like I use that money that I earned from like being a busboy and stuff like that to like basically pay for shit to that my club needed and stuff. And we also like charged fees, but everyone starts with that. I think like if you have limited resources, that's not really. I don't think that's a factor. I think that's like more of a spoiled like 2023 level of club thing where like, oh, I need money and blah blah blah. You really don't to run like a watch party and shit. But I think if you I think what's more of a factor is if you go to a small school, it's difficult to have like a huge club or anything. I think what you really have to focus on there is basically just like even if your numbers are small, that's okay if you consistently get people. Just get yourself to like 50 people, 50 people per event, consistently. That's not too hard in like a 3,000 person school or whatever. There's plenty of gamers, and just really focus on like making a tight knit community and stuff. And like 50 is probably the minimum that you can kind of start getting sponsorships and stuff. But even then, you should have like a consistent revenue to kind of like buy more resources to grow your program and stuff. And then eventually you graduate to sponsorships, and then you can kind of grow steadily from there. You may not get like the big number of sponsorships that big universities will get, but that shouldn't really be the goal. Like you just scale your ambitions with like what's possible and what the market size is, right? So
I always tell people, you become responsible for what you have tamed. So
yeah,
it's best to, before rush, don't rush to implement. At any time
yeah,
especially at the high school level, I see, oh, we're going to play 3 games and we're going to build a lab, and the next thing you know, they've sunk $200,000 into something, and they
yeah.
haven't even figured out how they're going to measure success. They
It's
haven't.
literally like building a startup. Like you have to find out like what is your market size, Like if your market size is small, then whatever you're trying to implement should be scaled to that level. You know what I mean? So yeah, I interrupt you. Sorry, you're gonna say something.
Oh no, because I think that's a great way to look at it, especially when you're speaking, as you said, you were a business major in college.
Yeah,
This is a great incubator. Then, if you don't have a club right now, run it like
yeah.
you would do a business startup, I think is what you're
That's
trying to say.
literally like everything I learned as a club founder was literally what I did as a startup. Like it's like a one-to-one. Like besides like obviously we're earning money and that kind of stuff, and you have to earn more money than.
Oh, you paused on me. All right, so we were talking about running it like a startup.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that running a esports club and like founding one was literally the same thing as running a startup. It was like, and I had more people under me as an esports org than I did as a startup founder. Like we had like something like 30 officers. We had like finance department, accounting. We had like we had like a marketing department and all that stuff. Yeah, it was definitely like you basically get to go through the startup journey just like from the safe space of like a club thing where like you're not really dealing with tons of money, or like people don't have as high expectations of you, and you can kind of like it's a test run. So like
Mhm.
yeah, I would say that like running and like just being part of esports club, whatever your role may be, is like the best job training and like career training you could possibly get in the industry right now. So
Very
that's why you see this whole generation of club leaders getting jobs, and like yeah, like a whole generation of esports industry people are pretty much all from Collegiate. But yeah, especially even
well.
Riot, so yeah.
Well, and I've seen again. I agree with you that some of the people I've seen, especially people who I guess when you meet them, you would wonder, is this person really a leader? And then you
Mhm.
find out again because a lot of people don't necessarily present as leaders. I think we have this
Mhm.
idea that leaders are all supposed to look like George Washington, right? You're supposed to be these like tall
Yeah.
people, male, white, and then you meet some very soft-spoken, smaller people, non-white, and
Mhm.
you go, are they really? And then you all of a sudden find out that they have been building like crazy over the last couple of years, and building not
Yeah.
just a, as you call it, a company, but this goes back to what you said earlier about building culture, which is when it comes to
Yeah.
companies, is something I think a lot of people miss.
Yeah,
Um,
I do think that like among people who are not like I've had this before where like I know people. I'm like very, because I had some conflicts with some early leaders at A&M. Like
mhm,
I'm very like standoffish with people who are very charismatic, because from my personal experience, they make not very good leaders. Like they're not good at running businesses. They're just good at like convincing people of shit.
mhm.
But then once they convince people of shit, when it actually comes to executing, it's like a clusterfuck pretty much. And to that credit, like as a leader, you're not supposed to be like an expert on everything. You're supposed to like basically like conduct the orchestra or whatever, but they're not very
Mhm.
good at that either. But like I would say that there's definitely an impression among people who are not like in those positions where it's like, oh, he seems more like a CEO, or he seems more like a blah blah blah, so like I'm going to take him more seriously. But I don't find that to be like a good metric of like whether or not the company is doing well,
Yeah.
um yeah, like because I have my own ways of finding out like how the companies are actually doing. And yeah, I've seen a kind of strong correlation between like, oh, he like it's almost like a certain number of CEOs, like they like to play the role of the CEO rather than actually do the job of the CEO. Like they're there for their ego pretty much. Like I'm the CEO of blah blah blah. Yeah, they just like that role, but they don't actually know how to play it. But like there is like a general like one group I'll say is like there's uh I work with a guy named like Bobby Thacker. He's like a young like Gen Z like Zoomer like CEO. Like he's like part of this community of like builders. People who
Mhm.
just like build. They're just like excited. They don't really give a shit about the whole ego being a CEO thing. They're just like product managers who like to build cool shit. That's like my ideal like startup person. Someone who's like just like innovative and stuff, not like I think like I've definitely categorized a bunch of CEOs based on like where they fit in my mind, I guess. And I think that's like the most admirable. And like they're like technically savvy and stuff. I do not belong in this group, but I wish I did. But yeah, that's kind of
But
yeah.
isn't that let me and just to throw this back at you,
Yeah.
not just as a devil's advocate,
Yeah, sure.
Sam Bankman-Fried is also kind of fits that mold that you just described, right?
Mm,
Are,
no.
okay.
Maybe
And,
similarly, but um I don't think that he would fit. No, maybe I'm not too familiar with the type of person he is, but
mhm.
I don't think that I think I'm looking even younger. Like I'm talking about like 21 years, like people who like built businesses when they're like 15 years old and shit. And not like there's always going to be bad people in every demographic, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, but it's not to say that. I think it's more because I think back earlier in this conversation, I also
Mhm.
said too, the people who are right now, the VCs who are writing the checks are in their 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
and there's still as there's a balance that
Mhm.
needs to just because somebody's 21 and the CEO of a company doesn't mean they don't
I
need
agree.
guidance,
It,
help.
it's It's the saying that like youth is not a guarantee of innovation, and age is not a guarantee of experience or some shit like that, right?
My line is, I go, youth is wasted on the young, and fast cars
Oh.
are wasted on the old. That's
I think that's addressing a different thing though. Yeah, but I do agree with that. It's just like, but I think what I'm addressing is more like people think, oh, it's not like just because you're young, you know, like how the like everyone should just be like, oh, he's like the new trailblazing person or whatever. And just because you're old doesn't mean that like, oh, he has a wealth of experience, I should listen to him, you know. I've
Mhm.
known a lot of like older people who are like pretty clueless and you know dumb, and a lot of older people who are like, you know, pretty wise, really experienced and whatever. And I know a lot of young people who like are really innovative, a lot of them who are just like idiots. So it's like it's like don't like, I guess, don't categorize people just because of their age.
Yeah,
There's a lot of other factors. I mean, it goes with like the whole racism thing and the whole sexism thing. Like, basically, don't
ageism.
judge people based on like wherever. Don't try and categorize like people based on like kind of irrelevant background stuff or just one factor, right? So
Well, and that again, I think is really important, especially because as we look at this, this space, there has been a call. I think whether it is overtly or subvertly to again remove people who are older because quote unquote they don't get it. And again, I'm 47. I'm by far probably one of the older people working at my company that I'm at now.
yeah.
I really destroyed the average age of the company when I joined.
Mhm.
But again, working in public education for as long as I have as well too,
Mhm.
I respect the ideas of youth, and I love the ideas of youth, especially high school kids. Actually, elementary school kids have probably some of the most outlandish ideas because they don't know any better, but they have good ideas. They just they're just 10, coming up with some of
Yeah.
these ideas. So I appreciate that you parse that as you did, out of my joking ageist comment about young youth is wasted on the young and fast cars are wasted on the old. But it was
Yeah.
not meant to be an ageist comment. It was meant to be a joke, by the way. So.
Oh, I didn't think it was ageist. I just thought it was.
Oh, I'm
it was
clearing that up for everybody else who might be listening
Oh,
to
okay.
this.
Because I think your thing was more of like um, it was more like enjoying life kind of thing, like differences, different ways of enjoying life, like based on your age. Whereas I was talking more about like, um, like business and innovation based on age or whatever. But
Mm,
yeah, I think like young people, like it's basically like liberal conservative kind of thinking where like young people tend to go off the rails a little bit, and then like older people like they may sometimes not like come up with they may live in like a different age, but they know how to navigate certain systems that have been like institutionally part of everything that like
mhm,
liberals like more liberal like young people may like kind of just like they may like separate from reality and just go into dreamland a little bit, and then like
mhm.
sometimes you need some older people to like bring them back, like this is the reality of how things are, and this is, if you want to implement something like this, you need to like do it a certain way, or like this is the best way to do it, rather than just like daydreaming. But yeah.
Well, and Dylan, I wanted to. There's one last question that I had, and I know this conversation has been very thick. We shall say very deep
Mhm.
with a lot of things, but there's a tweet you put out back on. Let's see, today is February 2nd. You put this out yesterday, and it resonated with me. It's not something that's gotten a huge lot of views, but your point being, I'll read the tweet for the people and link it in the
Sure.
show notes. The companies that are trying to get into collegiate from the outside always start with, quote, "We just want to work with everyone," quote.
Mhm.
And the moment they get a foothold from other people, they are the first to stab people in the back and push others off every time.
Mhm.
Can you speak to where that and again, if you don't feel like naming specific companies or groups or people, but can you speak to your perspective on that tweet when you put it out yesterday?
Yeah, sure. So I think like it's just like a LinkedIn trend thing where I've been around for a while, so like I've kind of seen companies come and go, but I definitely like, I feel like people who are part of Collegiate, like I describe it as a cult, but it is like more of like a family or a community that you're a part of, and
Hmm.
like I do trust them a lot more because I've pretty much never seen a collegiate person screw over the community or do something that like is like too exploitative. It's always like the outside entities that do it. Not always every outside entity, but every time someone is exploitative is always from an outside entity. But um, I think that yeah, it's just more like they lack credibility, so they create this like um this entity of openness, just like get as many connections as possible and stuff like that. And then once they get those, because they're not really part of the community and they don't really have an emotional investment to it, they like after they get this pool of contacts and stuff like that, they start like, okay, how do we like who's useful to us kind of thing, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And like I've heard of a lot of companies like where it's always the same group of people, because like people who are like from the industry who don't have that mentality of, oh, let's just help everyone, um they tend to be a lot more picky and a lot more, and not to say like, I know people complain about gatekeeping and clicks and stuff like that, but the reason why people are like that is because of like a like generations of mistrust from people like screwing over people, you know what I mean? And they may like people who are like a little bit earlier, they may not see that, they just, oh, like people are too clicky, blah blah blah. But they also don't have the scars like to understand why people are hesitant to like just accept anyone, you know? That whole like
Yeah.
rising tides lifts all ships thing is the most bullshit like saying I've ever heard. It's like, yeah, okay, well, if three of the ships are like full of Nazis, do we still want to lift them up, you know? Like it's like it's just like this blind like kumbaya mentality that's like super like low IQ kind of stuff. But yeah, I think like I said in like a couple tweets before that, just like people who like really vet people and like make the effort, not like the whole like blanket like, oh, everyone's our friend, but actually taking the effort like, hey, who's an expert, who's like well regarded, and actually like vetting the people you surround yourself with is a lot more valuable. Because like if you have that mentality of like, oh, I just want to work with everyone, you're gonna fall into the same groups of everyone else who just wants to work with everyone, who isn't vetting who they're working with, who isn't making the effort, and you just fall into the same like little clusters of like of non-reputable like entities that is by default, you know what I mean?
I
But if you actually make the effort, do some research, like find ways like, hey, is this something that people actually want, and am I doing right by the community, like actually make the effort to find, honestly find product market fit, then you'll find yourself in groups that are more exclusive but have more to offer, you know what I mean? So
I really appreciate you saying that because, first off, about the gatekeeping, I
yeah,
think that gatekeeping gets too much of a negative connotation,
yeah,
especially when we're talking about companies, for-profit companies that have to make a profit. And
yeah,
how are they going to make a profit? They're going to exploit and use whatever means they can to pay the least amount of money to get whatever they can in order to make their money. That's why I've been a longtime supporter of the state nonprofit organizations that are trying to run high school organizations, because again, a lot of it is volunteer led,
yeah.
working on sponsorships and donations. But also, I think, well, at the high school level, gatekeeping is important because we're talking about minors. At the
Well,
collegiate
not only
level,
that, but like in like the EDU space, there's also not a lot of people who are like checking people, you know? Like who could
that's
have like there's no big companies or big entities that are able, like if someone is being exploitative, who's gonna like call that out, you know? Like Play Versus was only like called out for like some of their behavior because like a bunch of like teachers managed to like kind of like spontaneously, or maybe or more organized, I don't know, but they all kind of rose up and like created a loud voice. But you can't, that's not like a sustainable way of like keeping watch over the industry, you know? That it's like when you have like a company that's flush with like VC cash going up against a bunch of like nonprofit like teachers and stuff like that, of course like you're going to put up a wall, because if you don't put up a wall initially, then they're just going to come and fill the place with money and like pretty much like do whatever they want with the space, and no one can defend against that, right?
mhm.
So yeah, like that um like putting up that wall is like a good like first step to like vetting entities and not just creating an open door where everyone can come in, because that's just stupid, you know? And yeah, I don't know, but I will say
I
this. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to just support you on that, in that I think there does need to be, as I've told people, assume that the investor, trace the money. Where's the money from this company coming from? There are a couple of them I've looked at where, Dr. Disrespect or Keemstar are primary financiers of the company. And I go back and go, okay, if a board member of my school was to know that and looked up Dr. Disrespect or looked up Keemstar and said, why are we doing business with these people? I should be able to answer. First of all, I shouldn't be surprised that the company that we are working with is that. And I also should be able to speak to the firewalls that are in place, because I should be at least be able to speak to that. If I can't, or I'm surprised by that, I haven't done my due diligence. And frankly, if I am going to do business with Keemstar or Dr. Disrespect, it's not going to be in a way that's going to, honestly, I think, either earn them a profit, because I don't agree with the way that they operate their businesses or conduct themselves. They are not within line of our goals, our values of our organization, by and large, in educational groups. And I don't want to give them the opportunity to clear or be able to point to other people when they do eventually screw up and create some kind of drama or do something inappropriate. And they say, but yeah, I'm working with kids. Okay,
Yeah.
that's effed. That's messed up.
EDU esports is like like students are especially like vulnerable like demographic, just because you have a bunch of people who are literally like, they're literally volunteers, so like it's pretty easy to exploit like a system where there's like free work being done like by the students and stuff like that. But also like yeah, it's just like there are also students who don't have a lot of like I guess like they don't have capital and they don't have a lot of influence. So whatever you do to them, there's going to be very little consequences unless it's just like a giant outcry, right? So obviously, like if you have some power and some influence in the EU space, of course you're going to use that to kind of like represent these students. But I will also say this: like I'm not just going to like blow smoke up people's asses. I one of my criticisms for like nonprofits and teachers is like they're very, and this does make sense. I don't think they're very good at running businesses and executing. They have very good intentions, and I trust them and stuff, but they suck. And honestly, like this goes into I know this will offend some people, but like you have to take the good with the bad. Like this goes with the whole like A students teach B students to work for C students. Like being good at school converts very badly into like running a business and like actual execution in like real life, because the whole point of a startup, and this is why a lot of startups are like run by C students, is because like if you're an A student, you're really good at being a cog in the machine,
You play
but
school well is the phrase I would typically use.
you know how to like work within the system. Maybe you'll make a good corporate person or something, but it like to be a startup founder, you got to break some rules, like not major rules, but you have to be like break out of the box of thinking, kind of think outside the box and kind of like move quickly and stuff like that. And people who are like very focused on education, book learning and stuff like that, it's just not, they're not that type of mindset. I mean, I know a lot of educators. I admire their work and stuff, but they move very slowly, and I think they have very little understanding of how to implement a business that actually like functions well. And to the credit of educators, a lot of startup founders also, I feel like there's a lack of respect from startup founders on educators as well. So it's like vice versa kind of thing, where they're like, oh, they're just like they may have some resentment from their high school years or whatever, but it's kind of like, oh, they're just educators, they're just teachers, like they don't understand what I'm doing. Well, you don't understand what they're doing.
I've heard those words.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yes,
like,
and what you're saying, and I will say this too, as you're going through this, what you were saying is an absolutely fair, I think, almost spot on criticism of the current state of NPOs. But please finish your thought.
Yeah, there's a lack of respect between both parties. I think educators, they don't understand how. Like I'll say, educators and esports directors don't understand the business as much as they think, and I think I don't think this has happened yet, but they run into the risk of thinking that everyone is exploitative. And I've seen that among club leaders too, where like we may have worked with them for years, but the newer leaders who may not have heard of us due to the COVID gap are very suspicious of us. Like, are you like, so what do we have to pay you? Where are the hidden charges and stuff? It's because it doesn't come from nothing. It's because so many people have exploited the system for so long that a lot of teachers just naturally like and I think that's normal, but you also don't want to like you don't also want to just like tear down everyone who's trying to help, because then like then you're just like you're complaining about a solution that you're not allowing anyone to solve, right? And then the whole startup founder thing is just like they just like not respecting your clients is the dumbest thing you can do as a startup founder. Like, oh, I'm in the high school space, but high school teachers are stupid. Like, okay, well, like you're basically fostering a hate among your main demographic of like clients, and that's just stupid. That's like, yeah, I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
You're preaching to the choir, because again, I've had that conversation with a CEO of a Scholastic esports company directly, and basically told that. So yeah. All right. As we've been going at this for about an hour, and again, Dylan, I really appreciate you giving your time like this. No, while we were talking about groups that are, we're tearing things down, I also want to give you an opportunity to lift up or highlight an organization or a person that you feel is doing great work before we get out of here. Things that person you admire or organizations you admire. And if it's none right now, if none pass your
there's
gold
plenty.
standard.
There's plenty. I would say that. I think that. In terms like, companies are kind of all over the place. I would say that like, I think that there's a lot of dialogue going on between a lot of very heated parties, and collegiate entities tend to, like, especially like the characters in the collegiate space and the EDU space tend to be a lot less professional, and maybe like a little too like verbally violent than would be digestible. I appreciate people like Sergio and like Chris Postel. I may not agree with Chris on a lot of things, but like just like there's like a certain demographic. Some of them are in voice, some of them are, but they're able to communicate things in a way that is like not erratic and crazy like me, but also not like super professional to the point where they're like lack of personality and any kind of like, oh, I don't want to give an opinion and I'm afraid of being fired, like that kind of like just passiveness. But people who are able to like stay professional, still show their passion, but in a way that people are like, okay, that's a really like professional balanced opinion, but I can also feel what you're feeling, you know what I mean? So like I appreciate there's a couple people like that. I can't think of everyone off the top of my head, but I appreciate people who are like able to find that balance, because that's a balance that I've never been able to find, and I don't intend on ever finding that balance, but like I appreciate the existence of it, so.
Well, at least you admit it. At least well, Dylan Liu, CEO of Uconnect. You can check out uconnect.app. That's where you can get information if you're interested in helping your collegiate organization connect with sponsorships. Dylan, it has been a very, like I said, a very thick, full hour conversation. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having me. Thank you for being a guest on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. Esports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote good physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We can never forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals. The vision of the Academy of Esports is for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. You may follow me on Twitter at Jim O'Hagan. That's at JIMOHAGAN, and through the Academy of Esports account at TAO Esports. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAOesports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.